Hi, this is John with The Evolving World. Today I'm doing a video on replacing the rear shock absorbers on a Chevrolet Bolt EV. So you may ask yourself, well, how do you know you need to replace the shock absorbers? Well, first thing you'll notice is the car will generally be driving wonky, just weird, unsettling feeling over bumps. So the first thing you want to do is you want to check your tire pressure. Make sure that that's okay. Then you want to make sure you check your alignment, make sure that that's okay. Once you've determined that, the next thing you want to do is just test the suspension a little bit. So what you do is you put pressure on it, and you just, as much as you can, just kind of use your body weight to kind of shake it around here. Now, as you notice here, I don't know if you can tell from the camera or not, but this thing is wobbling a lot. And then once you let go of it, it continues to wobble a little bit. That should not be happening. What should happen, if I go to the front of the car, you basically put pressure on it as much as you can, and it basically should just come back to its original position. There should be no shaking whatsoever. Unlike this car, where we're putting pressure on it, and it just keeps on wobbling up and down. So we should not be having that. So we already know that there's something wrong here. It's much softer than it should be. So next thing you want to look in a little bit closer here and see what's going on. So if you look up down below here, you can see that this is what it looks like when everything's okay. You can see that that shock absorber has labeling on it, and it looks nice and clean. It actually looks really clean all around here. This car has 70,000 miles on it. And over here on this side, if you look at the shock absorber, it's covered in oil, and now dirt has stuck to it. So that's a clear telltale sign that that shock absorber right there is totally blown out. So this being a beam axle, as you can see there's an axle going across. It's not an independent suspension, it's a semi-independent suspension. So basically both sides are tied together. So what's happening is right now, that shock absorber right there is doing double duty here. Because it doesn't make any difference if you go to the left side or the right side. We got all kinds of shaking going on here. So that's our problem right there. That's our culprit. So let's go ahead and fix it. First thing you want to do is you want to loosen the lug nuts where the car is still on the ground using a breaker bar such as so. 19mm socket. Next you want to chalk off the front wheels here. Keep any movement from happening. Then you're going to want to position your floor jack in this position such as shown. You basically want to have it centered right on the beam axle, which is where I have it right here. And we'll begin to, I'm using some blocking, and then we'll begin to jack up the car here. Next we position our jack stands, such as shown here. There are two little circles that are on the frame down here, and that's a good resting location. I don't know if you can see that, but that's where they are. There's two circles in the front too, and that's the front resting location. Next thing we do is we finish taking our lug nuts off and take our wheels off. Next you want to relocate your floor jack as shown, giving a little support to the shock and the suspension assembly. And then you want to just take a little bit of the load off right there. What we're doing is we're releasing any kind of pressure of this contacting our bolt there. It makes it easier for that bolt to come out. So this is what we'll be taking off next. It's the 18mm. Now with that bolt removed, that loosens this up. Now we just take off the bolts up here that are on the top. And what you do is you get yourself a 13mm socket and a long extension. And what you do is you just kind of gently move it in here, such as so. Lock it on like that. That gives you lots of room here to work with using that extension. Same thing on this side. Just gotta go over here. And there you go. Now that the shock assembly has been removed, the next step is to separate it from the mounting plate up here. So there's just a single 15mm nut right here that has to come off. So now what we've done is we've removed our cover right here. And now there's this bump stop right here. So this is an area that will never be in contact with the actual shock. So that's why it's okay to do this. So what we've done is we put a vice grip right to our rod right here. With that completed, the next thing you want to do is you want to inspect your upper mounting plate here. So this has a little bearing in it, and it also has a rubber bushing. So over time, these could dry out, the rubber, and the bearing can seize if it gets moisture in it, rust out or something like that. Now this is a relatively young car here, so we still got many miles to go. This looks perfectly fine. So this has probably got another 75K in it, or maybe another 150K in it. So that part looks good. So as long as that looks good, we can just set that aside and we'll be reusing that. As I was doing research about the OEM shock, I find that they're having the same problems even on the newer cars, like the 21s and the 22s. Cars only with 15, 20,000 miles on it are having the same premature shock failure. And as far as I can tell, there's no new product or no new part number superseding the old one. So they're basically using the exact same shock. So ever since 2017. So sometimes they come out okay, I guess, and sometimes they don't. And when they don't, you get something that fails prematurely. Because there are a lot of people that don't have any problems too. So there's definitely some inconsistency here. So I thought, okay, I'll buy an OEM part. I thought that was going to be the answer. But then I thought, well, if they haven't superseded the part with a better part, then I don't know. I might put a new one in and it might just last 10,000, 15,000. And I'll be right back here again doing it all over again. So I decided that the better thing to do is buy some beautiful Koni top-end, high-quality shocks, adjustable. They have a 4-position adjustable gas shock. It's this company has a very high reputation for consistent quality, and they have a lifetime warranty, which is unbelievable because compared to that, I don't believe that has a 1-year warranty, maybe if even that. Price difference, you might wonder about that. So I did some research. These are, you can get them on GM Parts Direct on sale for $72 a piece, and then plus shipping, tax, everything. It ends up being about $168 for a pair of them. Oh, that's another thing. You have to do them in a pair. They highly recommend that you do not replace one. You have to replace both of them as a pair. So that's what we're going to be doing here. And then the Konis were actually, I got a good deal. They were only $257, and that was everything total. And so for a pair of them, so it's a pretty sweet deal, and it's just such a more high quality. You can just look at the differences. You can see the thickness. I mean, it's just, yeah, they put all the because I mean, Koni, that's all they do. They just do shocks. So like they specialize in it. Companies like Bilstein, KYB, Koni. These are some of the best companies that specialize in that. I don't know who makes that. Somebody makes it for GM. Now, the only differences are we have, this is for the Chevy Cruze. Now, the Chevy Bolt is based off the Chevy Cruze. That's what this car started as, a Chevy Cruze, and then they heavily modified it. And as they continue to modify things with the battery pack, of course, obviously you had to do that, the motor in the front, but the chassis is basically, the underpinnings is basically a Chevy Cruze. So, same car. But they did make some changes, and I guess this is something that they did as time went on. And so, it's not an exact perfect fit. The differences are right here. So, on the Bolt, we have an 18 millimeter that fits in here nice and snug. You know, a little bit, it's just a tiny little bit of slack. And then on this one, the Chevy Cruze uses a 21 millimeter bolt down there for some reason. So we got a little too much slack down. So what I did is I found some product around the house. This is some silicone wire wrap, and it fits right in there. I cut it about the right size, and now we'll be able to get this right in and have it be nice and snug, and that will pretty much make up the difference right there. And that's just some of this leftover stuff from this wire that I've used on many of my EV conversion projects. So just happened to keep some of that. It's a good idea to keep these types of things. You never know when they'll come in handy again. So in this case, I think that's going to work because it's really hard, dense silicone material. So that's going to work pretty well for us. And then the other difference is, if you look right here, the width. So on the Bolt, this is about 52 millimeters wide right here. On the Cruze, it's only, well, I don't know, I didn't measure it, but it turns out to be that if we use a couple of these 1/2-inch shims, this is just something I just grabbed. I had a box of them, and you put them on 2 on each side. It works out to be almost exactly the same, about 52 millimeters. So that's what we're going to be doing right here. These are like 1/2-inch shims, just common shims. I don't know if if these things vary from shim to shim, but I mean, what I got here, it works. So like you put two on each side, and then that gets you 52. It's almost a perfect match. And then we'll tighten it down, we'll torque it down. It should fill in real nicely. Then along with this thing, that's just to help stabilize it in position. Once you tighten it, it should be locked into place, even without this. But that's going to be our modification part of the project. Otherwise, this whole thing is basically just stock procedure, putting it back together again, because we're going to be reusing this. We're going to be using the bump stop, and then we're going to be using the dust cap here. So now we're using our same technique to put it back together again. So we're using the vice grip to get a good grip on it. Another technique you can use is you can use a 5mm hex wrench here and a 15mm offset wrench here, as so. This technique would work too, except the only problem is, it's probably the recommended technique, but the only problem is how do you torque it? Here's what it's looking like back installed on the top. Now you just want to adjust your floor jack as necessary. Here it is installed. I've got this, you can see the shims right there as they fit nice and snugly in place there. It worked out pretty good. And then what you do is you tighten it down. That bolt right there needs to be tightened to 74 foot-pounds. And when you do that, this whole thing tightens as one unit. So it basically locks that in place. It's that little piece of orange rubber that's in there. That's just kind of a placeholder, just in case for some reason if it works free or something, to keep it from clanking. But I mean, it's really not going to clank because this whole thing is solid. So it's not going anywhere right now. This is going to be the solid position. Plus it's going to be under load most of the time as well. Oh, also, when you tighten this to 74, that's the first pass. You do that with your torque wrench. Then you come back and then do another 30 to 45 degree angle. So about another 1/8 of a turn. So what you want to do is break out the bigger breaker bar and then do another 1/8 of a turn to finish it. Alright, so here they are. Both of them are now fully installed and looking pretty lovely actually. I like the nice yellow color. It's kind of nice beefier look to it. They're definitely going to be a whole lot better than that factory crap. So one thing I've noticed is that the travel has increased a little bit, which is not a bad thing. So like I can't even put the left wheel on now because the travel has extended. It's extended it down about 1 inch or 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, something like that. So it's kind of interesting. Nothing like having a little extra travel. It's certainly within the limits of the car. It's not going to be any problem as far as that goes. But anyway, so it looks like we're all done, set, ready to go. Just put those tires on and let's go for a drive. So here's a little bit of additional information about the Koni Sport Yellows. Yeah, they have quite a history too. I've been hearing about these since I was a kid even. I think that they've been pretty consistent over the years and everything with having a high quality product. So all they do is just add additional applications to newer vehicles basically. But the formula is basically the same. They just know how to do it and they know how to do it right. So it's just a high quality shock. Some extra information down here. So I thought it's kind of interesting they have this graph here. Because, you might be concerned about where these things are going to be too harsh. Now, they are adjustable, but they're only adjustable on the rebound side. So that's like when you hit a bump, it would be the compression, and then the rebound would be the reaction to it afterwards. So the softer, the lower it is, the softer it will be, and then the faster, the higher this is, would be the harsher, but then it would be faster, more performance oriented. So you would have a quicker reaction. So it would be better for performance, but it would be harder ride. And so anyway, they show that this green line represents OEM, so original equipment. Although I'm not exactly sure what they're basing that off of. I mean, that's just, we assume that that's an average car. But I mean, But who's to say what's average? If it's all relative to who you're comparing it to. Because I mean, some cars have really stiff suspensions right out of the box. Other cars, not so much. So I don't know. I'd say that this is just an average. But you can see here that the Sport, when you have it on the minimum setting compared to the maximum, there's kind of a range there. So what I've done is I've left them on the minimum setting, which is still faster than the OEM, according to this chart anyway. And then if you want, you can always adjust it up a little bit firmer. But it's nice that it has that option. So it even says right here, what is the best adjustment setting for your shocks, right? So it just kind of depends. So it also says right here, for most vehicles, we suggest to be installed in the full soft position, which is the standard setting right out of the box. And that's exactly what I've done, is I've left them alone. And then it also says if you do upgrade your suspension, like if I want to put some new springs on that are stiffer, or maybe an anti-roll bars or something like that, or just lower profile wheels and tires, at that point you could come back to these same shocks. Instead of buying new shocks, you don't do that. You just take your existing shocks and you could simply move the settings up a notch. There's 4 notches. You could do a half a turn equals a second notch. Another half a turn would be a third notch. And down here it says very rarely will you ever need to go to the full firm setting. I suspect that that's probably race mode at that point, which is probably just full on super stiff, like, track only kind of stuff. So it's nice that you have that flexibility all within this shock. You don't even have to buy anything else. You just have to adjust it. So yeah, I think it's a solid purchase for only $89 more for a pair. I mean, it should be interesting to see how these do. Okay, so here I am driving a 195-mile loop that I did the day before I did the shock upgrade. That was on a Saturday, and then I did the upgrade on a Sunday morning, and now it's Monday, and I'm driving the exact same route. The weather's the same, temperature's the same, everything's the same, and so it's very clear as to what the differences are. It's quite a bit different. First of all, the ride is wonderful. I mean, it's immaculate. I mean, I think it's better than stock, and yet the response is excellent. And going around these corners and stuff, it's just very sharp. I feel really good about the lifetime warranty too, and I feel good about the ability to adjust the shocks if I want to make them a little bit stiffer or something, which this is fine. This is stock and it's fine. I don't know why anybody would want to make it stiffer. Although, you never know. Well, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe if you did. Many more videos to come.